Hello everyone, I'm Joe Cronin and welcome to the Toss-Up. We've reached the point in the year where only one thing matters here in Bloomington, and that is the Little 500 race. Stick around and yes, buckle it up because it's all coming up next on the season finale of the Toss-Up. It's time to wave the green flags as the greatest weekend in college is officially here, as two races will encapsulate the other 364 days of hard work that each man and woman have put in to be in the best position to win the Little 500 race. There are quite a few things to discuss with this year's race as Melanzana and Cutters look to keep the crown. There's another Laval making headlines and, of course, a classic game of trivia to cap off the season finale of the Toss-Up. And here to discuss the greatest weekend in all of college is the voice of the men's Little 500 race, Austin Platt, sideline reporter for both races, Kara Adams, and the voice of the women's Little 5 race, Zion Brown. Are we excited for this weekend? I mean, there's a buzz. The sun is out. It might be a little bit windy, but it is nice. Who's excited for the Little 500 race?
It's beautiful. It's too nice to be complaining about the wind, in my opinion. It's been a gorgeous week so far, hoping for similar conditions Friday and Saturday.
Someone like myself might get blown over. But
oh, sorry.
We know Joe doesn't like the wind very much.
With that being said, like I said, the storylines are hot for this year. The race, there's so much buzz that comes around this weekend. And Austin, I'll go to you first. What storyline speaks out to you the most?
The biggest thing for either race is the fact that Black Bulls is back. I mean, the fact that a two-time champion and a team that has so much history didn't qualify for the race last year was shocking, and that's an understatement. But big changes have been made. The alumni have poured in a ton of money to get this team back. They're third. They're in that first row, and they are back and hoping to get back on the top of the podium as well. That has to be the biggest story of the weekend.
Yeah, they're the lone team that isn't a fraternity that qualified within the top 5, so that will definitely be something that we probably talk about later. But Kara, best storyline?
I think for the women's race, one of the best storylines is DG, Delta Gamma. It's 4 senior riders. They've ridden together since freshman year. They've come up short the past couple years. They did win in 2020, but none of those girls were actually riding in the actual race. They're on the team, but this is kind of their one last chance to really win it all and take it home, and they've come up close the past couple years, but never gotten over that hump to get that first place title.
There is something that speaks true with sports. I think at really any sport you talk about, any level, is that experience will matter. And something like DG having so many seniors, we'll see if that is put to the testament. And Zion, best storyline?
On the women's race, you have to look at the fact that Melanzana is chasing history on Friday, going for the first three-peat in the history of the women's Little 500. I'm looking at that. They're starting at 12th, but they had a great spring outside of quals, and we've seen them the last 2 years start at 13th and still take it home. So I'm looking at Melanzana. They're a newer team. They're not the same riders that we've seen the last couple of years take it home, but they're all still really strong, had a really good ITT. I'm looking to see if they can get the first three-peat and really make their mark in Little 500 history.
We'll keep it on Melanzana for a little bit. You mentioned how they qualified 12th. In the past 2 years, it was 13th. So it was that lucky number 13, or unlucky, as some people might think. But Zion, will go right back to you. What will it take for this team to three-peat?
It all depends on when they start to sprint and if they can keep the sprints up, because that's been the big thing lately in the women's race that has shocked everybody, is that the sprints just keep happening earlier and earlier. I'm hearing reports and rumors that maybe there's going to be a team or two that sprints from the very beginning on Friday, which is ridiculous, but it all depends on if they can keep it up and really, pass other teams throughout the race. If they can do that again this year, they'll be right up there with some of the other top teams.
Now, Caribbean mixed in with both races. Do you see this Melanzana team being able to pull off some history?
I think I'm not sure about that one, to be honest. I think some of the other women's teams are so strong this year that I think it's going to be a really tight finish for the top kind of 6 teams in the race come Friday. I think anything's possible. They easily could, but I just think teams like Theta, AKO, DG, and then Novus Cycling has been really strong. A new team, only been around for 2 years, qualified 3rd at quals. I think those kind of teams could give them a run for their money.
Definitely want to keep in mind of some of those things. We'll get back to it, but mentioning running it back, moving to the men's side, Cutters wins last year in a pretty dramatic finish. And Austin, I'll just ask you, they lost a lot of talent from last year's team to this year's team. Can they pull off a back-to-back win?
They absolutely can. Talking to some of those guys this week, it's harder and harder for them to win, considering the more they have won in the past. It's hard to repeat in this race, but Judah Thompson is one of the best young riders out there. As a freshman last year, was on the bike for the very end. Actually, he was the second to last rider, but it was a huge part of that win last year. But he's going to be key, and the rest of the guys around him, they are a very, very confident team, Joe. I talked to one of them today, and they're like, we're ready to win the race. So I guess they're pretty excited for 2 o'clock on Saturday.
And they stick to their game plan. They did that last year. They did it 2 years or 3 years ago when they won. They've always just stuck to what they need to do and focus on themselves, and I think it's very impressive. Carrie, do you see this Cutter team running it back?
I could see them running it back, but I think SIGEP this might be the year they finally get that win. I talked to Will Pitts, their captain. He's on Riders Council as well, and he as well kind of just seems so confident. He told me that there's something different about this team that they've had this year. Ever since they got third place last year, they just have been so locked in and just continued to dominate. They won the fall series, they won the spring series, and he just said they're so focused on 2 p.m. for Saturday that this might be their year to finally get that win.
So you're thinking SIGEP takes, ever since the race came back after 2020 when it was not going on because of COVID, SIGEP has finished in the top 3 in all 3 of those races. So Platt, I'll go right back to you. Where do you think this SIGEP team is placing in the big race on Saturday?
They're definitely top 3. I think what it may come down to is who has the fastest rider, and definitely Cutters had that last year with Torrin. It was fantastic. And this year it's SAE that has that with Luke Knotts, his brother Matthew, now a freshman. Those are 2 of the top riders on the men's side. So having, I think, the fastest rider doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the race. I think that's different from the men's race to the women's race. But I think it's definitely big in that sense. But you got to give Delts, Josh Herbst, someone who broke his collarbone. He's got one more shot. And there's some other names in there in their last ride as well. So both Sigma Phi Epsilon, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, got to be up there. I can't imagine seeing both of them finish outside the podium spots.
You mentioned fastest rider, and that has kind of resonated with me to transition to the women's racer who, in the individual time trials, was almost 3 seconds faster than the second place winner. Last name with plenty of history in this race, and that is Audrey Laval of Kappa Alpha Theta. The story is there. The buzz is there. The Laval curse has been something that she has been told to her face about before. So, Kara, I'll go to you. Is the Laval curse getting broken, and is Kappa Alpha Theta being able to be back on top? They have not won since 2017.
I think it could definitely be broken. She's such an amazing person to talk to, and she's so focused on this race, and just she knows what it means to race for Theta and just to represent them. And they have come up close those past couple years, but never won. They're kind of like SIGEP, just like always a strong, consistent team, but can never get that final piece just to win the entire thing. But she's got 3 other really strong riders with her, and so I think her experience and leadership could propel them to get that win on Friday.
Zion.
Yeah, I see the same sort of thing. You never know what can happen, but when you've got the best rider, as Platt mentioned, especially in the women's race, you have quite a good chance to take it home. And when you look at Audrey Laval, she might be the best rider Theta has ever had, and that's saying something because this team has won 8 Little 500s, and she might be the best individual rider they have seen. And now it's about senior year, her last go at it. Can she break that curse that you're talking about and take it home? I think a lot of the race is going to come down to her, and more so what happens when she's off the bike and if other teams can catch up and make that ground against Theta while Audrey Laval is off the bike.
I'm not the one who's making up this so-called curse. Her 2 older brothers, Albert and Andrew, they raced for Phi Psi, and there was a race back in 19 that Albert got gas, and his younger brother, Andrew, as a freshman, came in and wasn't able to make up for the lost time. And then just a few years later in 2021, when Andrew was a junior, he was leading by about 30 seconds and had a heartbreaking crash that his bike broke. And so that's where this so-called curse comes from. I wasn't the one who said it. I'll reiterate that. But now as we transition into more of expectations of this race, Austin, I'll start with you. For the men's side, give me, 2 to 3 favorites and why these teams might be favorites to win the Little 500.
You have to put Cutters in there. Any Little 500 Cutters, if they're in the field, they have to be considered a favorite. I'll throw SIGEP in there, and then I'll also go with Delts. I think Josh Herbst is one of the stronger riders. I think that's a difference. So I'd say those 3 are kind of my main favorites right now I'm looking at. Talking to coaches and riders, it's the deepest field they feel on the men's side as a whole, but they still feel it's kind of 5 to 8 teams. They'd be shocked if one of those does not win. So those are my top 3 I'd give you right now.
Now, how competitive do you think that that field will become lap 199 and lap 200?
It's obviously crashes completely throw everything off in the race, and we say that every year. But I could see up to 7 to 8 teams. Last year, I think there were 8 teams or something on that final lap. It was a crazy stretch after one team got a 5-second penalty, pushed their way all the way back into that lead lap. So I could see it 7, 8 teams being on that lead lap. Anything like last year's finish, anything close to that will be perfect for the fans at Bill Armstrong.
Now, Carol, I'll let you choose which kind of favorites you want to do, whether you choose one from the men's, one from the women's, or both from either. Any favorites for this race?
The men's, I got to go with Sig Up still. I just think this will be their year. Like I said before, Will Pitts just seems so confident in his team and their ability to win it all this year. It was hard not to believe him talking to him. And then on the women's side, I think I'm going to go with DG. I think the experience and the leadership from those 4 seniors will just be able to give them the win.
Zion, favorites for the women's race?
I definitely think DG is one of those favorites. Obviously, we just talked about Theta. They have to be because they have Audrey Laval. And then I look at Teeter as the third one of those like top 3 favorites. Teeter in the pole position. They won quals. They're going to be first going on Friday. And I just think that's a really good team right now. And so those are the 3 I'm really looking at and say, okay, when it comes down to it, when I look at it, and Melanzana. I'll go 4. I'll give you a 4th one. And those are the 4 that I look at when it comes down to it. I feel like those are the ones that we are going to be seeing in the end having a chance to win as we get to lap 100 in the women's race.
I think it's a similar thing for what Austin said, that if you can't, I don't think you can keep Melanzana out of the discussion until they prove otherwise.
Yeah.
And even though they qualified 12th, I think that does matter. I'll bring it back with the women's race. How competitive do you think this field will be? Obviously, the last few years, it's been pretty large gaps. 2019 was a very close finish, but I mean, now we're in 2024, Zion.
Yeah, I just think because of the nature of the way this women's race has changed over the last 4 or 5 years, I feel like it actually started in 2019, even though that race ended up being close. Ski was a team that started to make an early push, and ever since then, that's kind of been the trend in the women's race. So I think because of that the finishes may not always be sprint finishes as close as we were used to seeing maybe before that. So I'm not sure how close I think it'll be this year at the very end, but I think throughout the race we will see several lead changes throughout the whole 100 laps.
Yeah, I agree with Zion. I think those kind of top 6 teams will really stay competitive, and it really will just depend on who starts the sprint first and what's going to happen with bike exchanges. If there's a crash, all of those things will play into it. But I think it's going to be an overall competitive race, at least for those kind of top 15-ish teams.
Now, before we head to break, I do have one looming question, and it's about the weather. Because the past couple years, it has been extremely unpredictable. It's Indiana in the spring. You never know what you're going to get. Last year was 40 and rainy. 2 years ago was, 80, blistering hot.
Okay.
So, Platt, I guess we don't know what the weather really will be, but how much of a factor do you think it'll have on this race?
I think it's actually very big. The new tires this year, which is I think another big storyline, they're slightly bigger, which helps the teams around the corners, but it's harder for them to speed up a little bit. I've talked to coaches and the guy I'm calling the race with, and he said, depending on the weather, you could see a 3 to 4 second change in the average lap, which is a big difference. I've looked at the weather for the men's race. It's supposed to be 60, partly cloudy, so talking to riders, that's like best case scenario, but the weather does have a big impact on the race because of the bigger tires.
Do you think this good weather will be able to hold up for possibly one of the best weather races in the past few years?
I mean, I hope so, especially last year for the women's race. It was delayed because of rain last year. So I think that obviously affects the teams individually when you're so ready to start at this exact time, and then all of a sudden you're waiting, you have to stay warmed up. So hoping for that partly cloudy 60 average weather. And the wind will also play in a factor, but weather's important, so hopefully it'll stay clear like it's been earlier this week.
Zion, the
Yep.
weatherman.
I'm hoping for Kara's sake because she's in the field. I'm hoping it's a perfect temperature, not too hot, not too cold, and obviously no rain. And that's what it's looking like, honestly. It might get a little cold toward the end, especially of the women's race as the sun kind of starts to set. But I don't think it'll be anything that it affects the riders too much. Obviously, they ride through rain and everything throughout the winter and the fall anyway. So I think it'll be fine, and that's the best case scenario. Like you said, there was that delay last year that kind of just threw everything off a bit, and I don't think we'll see anything like that, hopefully, on Friday.
Plenty of buzz with this year's race, as always. But coming up after the break, a tradition like none other, some Little 5 trivia. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the toss-up. In honor of tradition for the Little 500 episode, we have another round of trivia to close out the finale. Are you ready? Platt.
Sure, I'm ready.
Maybe.
I haven't mentioned that you are repping the classic tie at a proper length this year.
Yeah.
I know
Sounds
2 years ago
Goldilocks.
you were knocked off the trivia team.
Lost rock, paper, scissors. Brutal.
Did you win trivia last year?
No, there was rumors that I was cheating, but I finished last. So
Okay.
not cheating this year. Joe says he,
How'd you cheat and finish last?
Yeah.
because
Wait.
apparently I saw the questions ahead of time, but I didn't actually go and research them. But I think Evan leaked the questions to me, but I did the right thing and didn't cheat. So apparently he changed all the questions up, but I think you're asking all the same questions from last year.
Okay.
All smoke and mirrors.
Are you ready? Let's get right
Let's
into
do
it.
it.
Here's how it'll work. There's 6 total questions. 2 are 2 parts, so I guess 8 total points will be rewarded. I'm not having you write it down. It's just a buzz or raise your hand or just shout out, whichever one works. With question number 1. The race has not always been held at Bill Armstrong Stadium. What was the first year that it was held at the historic Bill Armstrong? Wow.
Wow, this
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this.
Speechless.
It's within the last 50 years.
That really helps.
It does.
1978.
didn't hit your thing.
1978.
Close.
I was actually going to guess that.
Bump
same
it up.
number.
Each one gets one guess per.
We'll go 1981.
Boom. Tied with 1
Wow.
point.
Come on, man. That's
These
too
questions
easy.
are different, aren't they?
A little bit. That might be
Yeah.
different.
All right. This one's a little long-winded. It's our first 2-part question. Howdy Wilcox Jr., who is the IU Foundation's executive director, started the race in 1951, which was modeled after what real race?
Indy 500.
Indy 500. That his father, Howard Wilcox, won in what year? I'll give you a hint. It was the 8th running of the Indy 500.
Oh, let me do my math here. 1925.
Nope. Wow, this is stellar performance so far.
1928.
Ooh, we're overshooting right now. Platt, bring us home.
1918.
So close. 1919 was when Howard
That's like
Wilcox Sr. won it. So
Oh, you know what? I was thinking. I think the 100th
100
Indy
2019?
500 was in 20
Or 20
was in like 2017, but I didn't take into account the wars.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the wars definitely. I didn't take into account that. So right now our scoreboard is Zion 1, Kara 1, and Platt laying a big old goose egg, leading to question 3. The Little 500 race inspired a certain film to be made,
Break it away. Oh.
which was released in what year? You didn't let me finish the question.
1986.
1973.
Sandwiched it.
I should know this. My mom's gonna be mad.
1984.
79. Still tied with Platt at the bottom, as the way it should be. Question 4 and 5 are very similar to each other. Hopefully these are the ones as the broadcasters you guys get. How many wins is Cutter's chasing?
16. I currently have 15.
Yes. How many wins is Kappa Alpha Theta chasing?
9.
9.
I said it
2,
earlier.
1, 1. To our final 2-part question. Once again about the film Breaking Away. What team and what race year was Breaking Away based off of?
It was based off the Phi Psi team.
Yes. There's a point. We got a
in
tie.
The year, 1976.
Nope.
I got to guess a year.
It's old.
1964.
So close. So close.
1965.
62.
Oh, wrong direction.
19, so we have a tie at 2, 2, and 1. I don't really have a tiebreaker question prepped right now, but I guess we'll do rock, paper, scissors for the win. So if we pan the camera here to Zion and Kara, to rock, paper, scissors for the winner of Little 500 Trivia. Just one, not best 2 out of 3. 1 rock, paper, scissors on my count.
Okay.
Rock.
Wait.
Oh, wait, hang on. Can you do a countdown?
Really bad.
3, 2, 1. Rock, paper, scissors,
shoot.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, no.
Do it again.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Congratulations to Kara. You have won the Little 500 Trivia for back-to-back years. Austin Platt has gotten last.
Yeah.
And before we head out, this is going to wrap up the final show of the year. And before we say goodbye to a fantastic year, there are a few thank yous that need to be said from myself. first and foremost to everyone in the control room right now and all year long. Have done a fantastic job putting this show on, putting on Hoosier Sports Night at Well, taking time out of their Wednesday evenings. So thank you so much. You all have done amazing. My second thank you is to my man who's the floor director, my co-host, my partner in crime, Mr. Riley Woodall. So proud of what we've been able to do this year. Very excited for what our second year commanding this show will look like. The third thank you is a two-part with Emma Watson and Eva Kamiko for giving Riley and myself this chance to be the hosts of this show. And to Emma especially, best of luck in your final broadcast here tonight and your final broadcast for the Little 500 as a college student. And best of luck moving forward. And the final thank you to our current IUSTV sports directors, Kelsey Dennehy and Josh Bodie, for allowing my nonsense and shenanigans to be aired on the show bi-weekly. I really can't thank you enough. And to Josh, please pump in your fist. Please keep pumping your fist to courtesy of the red, white, and blue. It's truly amazing. But with that, that will wrap up the season finale and the 2023-24 season of the Toss-Up. So we'll toss it up. We'll see if it lands, and we'll see you in the fall.